The rescue that changed everything. The air on Vaerin was thick with the smell of spices, dust, and smoke from the open cooking fires. The market square was always noisy merchants shouting prices, children running between stalls, and the hum of small hover carts moving goods. Captain Rhys Calder walked through the crowd with a heavy crate balanced on his shoulder. He wasn't here for sightseeing. He was just delivering supplies from his cargo ship before heading back to deep space. His Terran boots clicked against the stone floor, and a few people glanced at him with the usual mix of curiosity and caution. Humans were rare this far out in the galaxy. He was halfway across the square when the sound changed. The voices didn't fade, they broke. Screams cut through the air. A loud metallic crash rang out from the north entrance. Then he saw them, 3 armored raiders pushing into the market. Their armor was black, dented from many battles, their helmets shaped like the skulls of predators. They moved fast, knocking stalls aside and shoving people out of their way. One of them grabbed a young merchant by the throat and threw him to the ground. Another raised a blaster toward the crowd. Rhys felt his pulse spike. His mind instantly shifted into the old rhythm combat training kicking in without thought. He ducked behind a spice cart, eyes scanning the scene. He wasn't military anymore, but instincts never really left you. Then he saw her. A small girl alien, maybe 10 years old, stood frozen near an overturned fruit stall. She had pale silver skin, bright violet eyes wide with fear, and a long braid that trailed over her shoulder. Strange gold markings ran down her neck and arms, glowing faintly under the sunlight. One raider spotted her and shouted something in a language Rhys didn't know. The tone was enough. She was their target. The girl turned to run, but her foot caught on a broken crate. She fell hard, scraping her palms. The raider was already moving toward her. Weapon in hand. Rhys didn't think. He moved. He sprinted forward, dropping the crate with a crash. The raider aimed too slow. Rhys slammed into him shoulder first, knocking the weapon aside. A flash of light burned past his ear as the shot went wild. He drove his fist into the raider's helmet, hard enough to make the man stumble back. The second raider swung a blade. Rhys grabbed the girl, pulling her behind him, and kicked the attacker in the knee. The joint gave with a sickening crack, and the raider fell to the ground with a roar. "Stay behind me." Rhys shouted over his shoulder. Blaster fire hissed past. Market stalls exploded into splinters. People scattered in every direction. Rhys grabbed a fallen staff from the ground and spun it like a spear, slamming the last raider in the chest and sending him tumbling backward into a pile of baskets. He turned to the girl. "We have to move now." Her eyes stayed locked on his, as if she was trying to decide whether to trust him. And she nodded. He led her through the chaos, weaving between fleeing merchants and burning stalls. The air filled with the sharp smell of ozone from blaster fire. Somewhere behind them, the raiders shouted in frustration. They ducked into a narrow alley between 2 buildings, the noise of the market muffled by thick stone walls. Rhys crouched to her level. "You hurt?" She shook her head, but her hands trembled. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a language he didn't understand. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe for now." That was when shadows shifted at the far end of the alley. A tall figure stepped forward. A woman, elegant and commanding, wearing deep blue armor lined with gold. Her hair was long and black, her eyes the same violet as the girl's. Behind her were 4 armored guards, weapons ready. But it wasn't the weapons that caught Rhys's attention. It was the way the woman looked at him. She strode forward, her gaze sharp and unyielding, yet strangely. Assessing. The girl broke free from Rhys's side and ran to her, burying her face in the woman's armor. The woman knelt, holding her close, murmuring words in a soft voice. When she looked back up at Rhys, her expression had changed. There was something heavy in her eyes, respect maybe, or something more ancient. She stepped closer, stopping just a pace away. "By ancient law, human," she said clearly, in accented but perfect Terran, "you saved my blood. Now you must. Take us both." Rhys blinked. What?" She didn't answer. She simply motioned to her guards, and then something happened that made his stomach twist. The guards, every single one, dropped to one knee in front of him. The market noises in the distance seemed far away now. The girl peeked out from her mother's embrace, her violet eyes locked on him like he was something far more than just a passing cargo pilot. Rhys's pulse hammered in his ears. He had no idea what ancient law meant here, but the way they were all looking at him. It wasn't a request, it was a claim. Asterisk, the law of blood and bond, the walk back to the alien. Palace felt less like an escort and more like a trial. 2 guards marched in front of Rhys, 2 behind, their armor plates clicking. With each step, the tall woman, the one who had spoken of ancient law, walked beside him in silence. Her presence was calm, but it carried weight, like every movement meant something. The streets of Varen were nearly empty now. Market stalls stood abandoned, the smell of smoke still hanging in the air. Above, the pale twin moons peeked through the afternoon clouds. Rhys glanced at the woman. "You going to tell me what all that was back there? Or am I supposed to just guess?" Her eyes didn't turn toward him. "My name is Lady Siren of House Valoran. That girl you saved is my daughter, Lyra. She is the last living heir to my bloodline." Rhys slowed slightly. And, she said, voice steady, "Virathi law is clear. When the life of royal blood is saved, the rescuer becomes blood-bound guardian. If the rescuer is unbound without mate or clan, the bond extends to the guardian, taking the royal's closest kin into their life permanently." He stopped walking. "Wait, permanently? As in until death," Siren said, finally meeting his gaze. Her violet eyes didn't flinch. "By saving Lyra, you have claimed her. By our law, you now claim me as well." Rhys let out a short laugh, but it didn't sound amused. "That's insane. I was just doing what anyone would do." "Anyone?" Siren's brow arched. The crowd did not move. "Only you did." The guards didn't slow their pace. One of them glanced back at Rhys, his expression unreadable behind the visor dot. They entered the palace gates, tall silver walls, carved with flowing patterns, guarded by massive steel doors that closed with a deep thud. Inside, the air was cooler, filled with faint floral scents from hanging vines. Siren led him into a high-ceilinged hall where a half-circle of robed figures waited. The High Council, an older man in white robes, spoke first. "Human, step forward." Rhys stayed where he was. "Before I step anywhere, I want to make it clear I didn't agree to any of this." Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. Siren remained still, her face like carved stone. The elder's voice deepened. "The law of blood and bond is not a choice. It is tradition older than our recorded history. Without it, the royal line would not survive." Rhys's jaw tightened. "Look, I'm just a cargo pilot. I'm not here to play bodyguard or whatever this is." The elder leaned forward. "Guardian, husband, protector. You will be all these things, or you will be hunted for breaking sacred law." That last part made Rhys pause. Hunted? A second counselor, younger and sharper-faced, smiled thinly. "Our law binds as tightly as our vengeance. If you refuse, the punishment will not be gentle." Rhys's mind raced. They weren't bluffing. He could see it in their eyes. Siren finally spoke. "You will have quarters here. The bonding ceremony will be arranged within the week." He turned to her. "And what if I leave before then?" Her voice stayed calm, but there was steel in it. "You will not make it beyond the gates." And even if you did, there are eyes in every starport. You would not escape the hunt. Silence stretched for a moment, heavy and cold. Then Lyra appeared from behind one of the guards. She walked up to Rhys, holding something in her small hands. Piece of cloth torn from his jacket during the fight. She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Stay," she said softly in accented Terran. Rhys felt something shift inside him. He didn't want this, but he couldn't forget the way she had clung to him in the alley, or the way she was looking at him. Now the Elder spoke again. "It is decided. The human will remain under House Valoran protection until the bond is sealed." As they escorted him to his new quarters, Rhys caught fragments of whispered conversation between two guards. "Won't last the week. Assassins will see to it before the ceremony." He didn't let his face show it, but his mind sharpened instantly. They weren't just forcing him into a life he didn't ask for. Someone was already planning to make sure he didn't live long enough to complain. Asterisk. The threat in the shadows Rhys called her didn't sleep that first night. His new quarters were luxurious high-arched windows, silk sheets, walls carved with flowing symbols, but they felt less like a gift and more like a cage. Two guards stood outside his door, silent as statues. The air smelled faintly of polished stone and something floral. He sat in the chair by the window, boots still on, eyes scanning the shadows. His years in the Terran military had taught him one thing: danger. Didn't wait for morning. It came at night. And tonight it came quietly. A faint scrape on the window frame. A flicker of movement in the dark. The glass shimmered, then shifted as a shadowed figure slid inside with the grace of a predator. Rhys didn't move until the figure's feet touched the floor. Then, in one sharp motion, he stepped forward, grabbed the intruder's wrist, and slammed it against the wall. A thin blade clattered to the ground. The assassin hissed in an alien tongue, twisting like smoke to break free. Their skin was marked with deep blue patterns, their armor lightweight and flexible for silent kills. They moved faster then. Most humans could track, but Rhys had fought faster. A sharp elbow to the assassin's ribs made them grunt. He kicked the blade away, sending it under the bed. The intruder pulled a small dart gun from their belt, aiming for his chest. Rhys shoved the assassin's arm upward, the dart embedded in the ceiling instead. Without hesitation, he swept there, legs out from under them, sending them crashing to the floor. Before Rhys could demand answers, the door burst open. Two palace guards rushed in, weapons drawn. The assassin didn't hesitate. They rolled to their feet, threw a smoke pellet, and vanished into the haze. By the time the smoke cleared, they were gone. The guards exchanged glances, tense. One turned to Rhys. "Are you injured?" "No," he said, brushing smoke off his jacket. "But you've got a hole in your security." The guard stiffened, but didn't argue. Minutes later, Lady Siren appeared, her deep blue armor glinting in the torchlight. She scanned the room, eyes sharp. "What happened?" "Your welcoming committee tried to put a knife in my ribs," Rhys said dryly. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed. "I warned the council this would happen." "You warned them?" Rhys stepped closer. "You mean they knew someone might try to kill me?" "They know there are those who oppose the bond," Siren replied evenly. "You threaten the balance of power. Some would rather see you dead before the ceremony." He stared at her. "You're very calm about that." "Because I am alive," she said simply. "And I intend to keep you that way, at least until the bond is sealed." Her tone was measured, but he caught something in her eyes, an unspoken thought, maybe even concern. Then a small voice came from behind her. "Is he hurt?" Lyra stood in the doorway, clutching a blanket, her violet eyes wide. She crossed the room and stopped in front of him, looking him over like she was checking for injuries. "I'm fine. Reese said gently. Go back to sleep. But she shook her head. The shadows move at night, I told Mama. Siren placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Go to your chambers, Lyra. The girl lingered a moment longer, then obeyed, glancing back at Reese. Before disappearing into the hall, once they were alone, Reese crossed his arms. So what now? I just sit in this room and hope your law keeps me alive? Sirene's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. No, you will learn to move in the palace like one of us. You will see the hidden ways, the guard patterns, and the places where a knife can find you before you see it. He raised a brow. You're going to train me? I will prepare you, she corrected. You already know how to fight. But here you must also know how to survive the politics. Something in her tone made him believe she wasn't just protecting him out of duty. That night, instead of sleeping, they walked the palace together, through narrow service halls, secret stairwells, and high balconies overlooking the city. She showed him where the guards' sight lines failed, where the shadows gave cover, and where an assassin could strike unseen by dawn. Reese knew two things. One, if the assassins came again, he'd be ready. Two, Siren was far more dangerous than he had first thought, and not just to her enemies. Asterisk the bonding ceremony, the palace was alive with light and sound. Drums echoed from the great hall, deep and steady like a heartbeat. Long banners of blue and gold hung from the high arches, and the floor gleamed with polished stone that reflected the glow of thousands of candles. Nobles in flowing robes filled the chamber, their faces painted with the ceremonial white streaks. Of Blessing Reese Calder stood at the far end of the aisle, wearing armor unlike anything he'd worn before, smooth black plates trimmed with silver, a crimson sash tied across his chest. It felt heavy, but not from the weight. Every eye in the hall was on him. Beside him, two guards kept a respectful distance. Behind the crowd, more soldiers lined the walls. Somewhere in that sea of bodies, he knew there were eyes that didn't wish him well. The pounding drums slowed. A hush fell over the hall. Lady Siren entered. She was dressed in deep royal blue, her hair braided with gold thread, a small crown resting above her brow. Lyra walked beside her, carrying a silver cord, the ancient symbol of the blood bond. The child's violet eyes sparkled with excitement, but her steps were careful, measured, as if she understood the weight of the moment. Reese's eyes met Sirene's as she approached. There was no smile on her lips, but her gaze lingered just long enough for him to see something beneath the formality: acceptance, maybe even trust. The High Council elder raised his hands. By the law of blood and bond, we gather to witness the joining of the rescuer and the saved, the protector and the kin, the human and the house of Valoran. The crowd bowed their heads. Lyra stepped forward, offering the silver cord. Siren took one end, Reese the other. The elder began the vow. You, Reese Calder of Terra, do you swear to protect these lives as your own? The words were cut short by a deep, thunderous boom. The floor trembled. Several candles fell, their flames flickering wildly. Gasps rose from the hall as another explosion shook the walls. Dust drifted down from the high ceiling. A guard rushed in from the side entrance, breathless. They've breached the outer gates. Panic spread through the crowd. Nobles scattered, their flowing robes whipping as they hurried for the exits. Soldiers moved in tight formations, forming a protective wall around the dais. Reese dropped the cord and reached for the blade at his hip. Who is it? The guard's voice was grim. The Black Fang mercenaries. They're here for the human. Siren didn't hesitate. She took Lyra's hand. With me, now. The elder counselors shouted orders, but the noise was swallowed by the chaos as armed figures in black armor burst through the hall doors. Weapons flashing. Reese stepped forward, meeting the first merc head-on. His blade locked with the enemy's, sparks flying. He twisted, disarming the attacker, then slammed him backward into the stone wall. Another came from the left Reese ducked, sweeping their legs and sending them crashing to the floor. Siren drew a slender, curved sword from her side, moving with lethal precision. Her strikes were fluid, almost beautiful, each one dropping. An enemy before they could reach Lyra. Go! She shouted to Reese. Take her to the hidden stairs. But Reese didn't move toward escape. Instead, he turned to block two more mercenaries charging from the flank. I'm not leaving you. The fight turned into a storm steel against steel, shouts, the sharp crack of energy weapons. The hall's perfect order dissolved into chaos. Lyra clung to Sirene's side, eyes wide, but dry. She'd seen danger before Reese caught sight of the mercenary leader near the shattered doorway, shouting orders. His armor was jagged and marked, with black sigils. Their eyes met across the chaos, and in that look, Reese understood. This wasn't just an assassination attempt. They weren't here to scare him away. They were here to end the royal line tonight. With a burst of motion, Reese broke through the fight, cutting a path toward the leader. But just as he reached striking distance, a flash grenade detonated, flooding the hall with blinding white light. By the time his vision cleared, the mercenaries were pulling back, vanishing into the smoke. The leader gave him one last, cold look. Before disappearing into the shadows, silence fell, broken only by the crackle of small fires and the groans of the injured. Siren stood among the wreckage, breathing hard, her sword still in hand. Lyra clutched her leg, looking between them. The elder's voice shook as he stepped forward. The ceremony will be delayed until the threat is removed. Reese looked at Siren. They won't stop. Her eyes were cold fire. No, they won't, which is why we will end this before they try again. The battle for Blood Bond, night sky over Varen, was on fire. From the high balcony of the palace, Reese could see the burning outer district rooftops glowing red, smoke rising in black columns. The faint echo of blaster fire reached them even. Here, the council wanted to lock the gates, hide behind their walls, and wait for reinforcements. Siren refused. They will not stop at the gates, she said sharply, strapping on her curved sword. Once they take the streets, they will turn. Their weapons on this palace, on Lyra. Reese met her eyes. Then we take the fight to them. Minutes later, they were riding through the side gates on sleek, low hover bikes, Reese on one, Siren on another, two of her best guards flanking them. Lyra was safe in the palace's inner chamber, guarded by soldiers Reese had personally approved. City was chaos. Black Fang mercenaries moved in tight squads, torching buildings and cutting down anyone who resisted. Civilians ran for cover, pulling their families into alleyways. Reese's cum crackled. Sector 4 is falling, one of the guards reported. Not tonight, Reese muttered, leaning low over his bike. He gunned the engine, weaving between shattered market stalls and down the narrow stone streets. They found the first squad of mercenaries near the old Fountain Square. Reese hit the brakes hard, sliding the bike sideways and using its momentum to slam into two soldiers, sending them sprawling. He was off the bike before it stopped moving, blade already in hand. The first attacker swung high. Reese ducked under, driving his shoulder into the merc's chest and finishing the move with a sharp elbow to the jaw. Siren moved like lightning beside him. Her strikes were precise, economical, and final each, one leaving an enemy on the ground before they even realized they'd been hit. Your style is messy, she said over the clash of blades. Your style is slow. Reese shot back with a grin, deflecting a strike meant for her. Another wave of mercs spilled into the square. Blaster bolts hissed past. Reese kicked over a heavy wooden cart, using it for cover. Siren vaulted over it, her curved sword flashing in the firelight. They fought back to back now, their movements sinking in ways neither expected. When he blocked high, she struck low. When she spun to deflect a blow, he was already stepping in to finish the attacker. For the first time, Rhys realized they weren't just surviving, they were winning. But then, a shadow fell over the square dot from the far end. The Black Fang leader emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, and clad in jagged black armor. In his hands, he carried a massive energy glaive, its twin blades humming with deadly light. "Calder." The voice boomed. "Step aside. We only want the child's bloodline." Rhys stepped forward, his voice like ice. "You'll have to cut through both of us." The leader laughed, a low, metallic sound. "Gladly," he charged. The impact of glaive against blade rattled Rhys's arms to the bone. Sparks flew. The Merc leader was strong enough to drive him back step by step. Siren struck from the side, but the glaive spun, catching her blade and knocking it aside. She stumbled but recovered instantly, circling to flank. They fought together, forcing the leader into a tight corner near the fountain. Rhys feinted left, drawing the glaive up high. Siren lunged from the opposite side, her curved sword sliding between armor plates with a clean, precise thrust. The leader staggered, snarling in pain. He turned to flee, but Rhys slammed his blade into the cobblestones in front of him, blocking the path. "Tell your people," Rhys said coldly. "If they come for her again, I'll bring the fight to their home." The leader's eyes narrowed, but he retreated into the shadows, his remaining soldiers pulling back with him. When the square was finally quiet, Rhys looked over the wreckage. Fires burned in the corners, the smell of scorched stone hanging heavy in the air. Siren stepped beside him, her voice low. "You fight like a man with something to protect." Rhys met her gaze. "I do." For a moment, they just stood there, the flicker of firelight catching in their eyes. No words, no ceremony, just a silent understanding that the bond between them was already forming, even without the Council's blessing. Asterisk, the human who stood for the fires in Vararin had been put out, but the scent of smoke still lingered in the air. The streets were scarred blackened stone, shattered windows, market stalls reduced to splinters. But for the first time since his arrival, Rhys Calder wasn't thinking about escape. He was thinking about staying. The High Council had called for the bonding ceremony to resume, this time in the palace courtyard under the open night sky. Guards lined the perimeter, weapons ready. Above, the moons hung low in silver, their light mingling with the warm glow of torches. Siren stood across from him, dressed not in the heavy ceremonial armor of before, but in a simpler robe of deep blue, her curved sword still at her side. Lyra stood between them, holding the silver bonding cord once again. This time, there were no long speeches. The elder's voice was calm but firm. "By the law of blood and bond, rescuer and kin are joined. By the will of those bound, the bond is sealed." Rhys took one end of the cord. Siren took the other. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Their eyes locked, a silent conversation passing between them. This is not just tradition. This is choice. They tied the knot together. The cord glowed faintly, the mark of the law settling into place. The crowd bowed their heads in respect. When the elder stepped back, Rhys expected formality to take over again, but Siren surprised him. She stepped closer, her voice low enough only for him to hear. "You could have run after the first attack," she said. "You stayed. You fought beside me." "I will remember that." Rhys gave a small smile. "You're hard to walk away from." Before either could say more, Lyra slipped her small hand into his. "Now you're ours," she said, her tone simple, as if that explained everything. Rhys squeezed her hand gently. "Yeah, kid. I guess I am." The ceremony ended, but there was no grand feast. Too many lives had been lost, and the Black Fang threat still lingered. Instead, Rhys and Siren walked together through the quiet palace halls, Lyra skipping ahead of them. "You know this won't stop them," Rhys said. "Tonight was just the opening move. They'll regroup. They'll try." "Again," Siren nodded. "Yes, which is why we will not wait. The Black Fang hold strongholds in the Outer Rim. If we take the fight to them, they will have no time to strike here." Rhys glanced at her, a faint grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're talking about war." "I'm talking about survival," she replied. "And you are my partner now, whether by law or by will." For a long moment they walked in silence. Then Rhys stopped, looking at her fully. "It's not just your fight anymore. It's mine too." Siren's gaze softened, and for the first time she allowed a true smile, small but real. Lyra's voice broke the moment. "If we win," she said, "can we go to the market again?" "The one with the sweet bread?" Rhys laughed quietly. "Yeah, we'll go to the market." The three of them reached the balcony overlooking the city. The moons painted the rooftops in silver light, and far on the horizon, the faint glow of damaged districts still burned like distant embers. Rhys rested his hands on the railing, scanning the streets below. "You know," he said, "when I came here, I was just delivering cargo. Now I've got a crown I never asked for, a war I didn't start, and 2 lives depending on me." Siren stepped beside him. "And you carry it without breaking." He looked at her, his voice quiet but certain. "I carry it because they're mine now." They stood there for a moment, the night wind moving through the courtyard, the city holding its breath between peace and the next storm. Somewhere in the shadows beyond the palace walls, the Black Fang still plotted. But for now, Rhys called her, stood ready not as a captive, not as an outsider, but as the human who would stand for both of them.